wanted to say good morning. It's nice to have everyone on this call, and it's really good to see everybody. I'm just going to introduce the center who's actually presenting this morning. And is anyone from Toronto on the call? No? Okay. The center is called FCJ Refugee Center, and it's located in Toronto at St. Clair and Oakwood. So what they do, their specialty is serving refugees and other people who are at risk due to their immigration status. But FCJ welcomes all people looking for advice and counsel and support in these particular issues, on these issues. FCJ addresses systemic issues that newly arrived refugee claimants face in Canada, including lack of resources, marginalization, and discrimination. And countless people are touched by their services. I had the privilege of doing a student placement with FCJ a number of years ago, and was able to work alongside them in terms of educating service providers around human trafficking. And this morning we have with us Diana Gallego, and she's a Colombian trained lawyer with experience in advocacy, human rights, and social justice. In 2002, Diana was forced to flee Colombia with her husband and her son. This experience shaped a new commitment and led her into working with immigrants and refugees. Diana graduated in community work from George Brown College in Toronto, and she's here to present to us today. And I'd just like to give her a welcome. So if we can just give her a hand and welcome her for coming today. Thank you, Diana. I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay, thank you. You can just move the next one.
Sure.
In the last 30 years, FCJ had been serving clients, especially refugee claimants and precarius migrants, for almost 30 years. During the pandemic, we had to adapt. That's the nature of FCJ. We respond to the needs of the people. Sometimes even we try to plant what are going to be our activities, but FCJ, the nature of FCJ is to be present, to have our doors open wherever are the needs. Then sometimes we just quickly adapt and move. This year with the pandemic, we started with, we have a food security program that we were serving around 60 people, and now we have around 500 families around GT8 that we bring food. We bring cards for them to buy groceries, and also we have a rent assistance. This program is one of the unique programs in Toronto. We partner with the city, and we figured out that many newcomers, those with precarious status or non-status, were the ones that, even though they were testing positive for COVID, they were forced to go to work because they couldn't access to any of the programs. Then we partner with the city, and we create kind of unique support, and people without status that got COVID-19, they were able to receive the same amount of assistance if they were receiving Ontario Works. Then this is kind of just an example of how as FCJ develops into whatever are the needs of the community. During the pandemic, we had been serving an average of 5,000 people. 5,000 people have contacted us just on 2020, asking how they can regularize, asking, I'm going to be evicted, where I can get vaccinated because I don't have a hip. Then that had been a really, really busy year, and 2021 is almost at the same trend. You can move to the next one. Then today, we are going to talk about the definitions. What are precarious migrants? Who is a refugee? Who is a migrant? A displaced person? An immigrant? An asylum seeker? We know that sometimes we listen to these words in the media, or where we are working with clients, and sometimes the terms depends of how you define a person, means they can have access to certain services in the community. Then we are going to talk about the FCJ Refugee Center responding to the pandemic. Then we are moving to the refugee process overview, the basic rights for refugee claimants, what are the resources that are in the community for them, what are the barriers faced by immigrants, and what are the resources for specifically for refugees. You can move the next one. Then a refugee, sometimes we hear in the news and in the media that they tell us, okay, there are asylum seekers crossing the borders from the United States to Canada. We see others, especially in Canada, calling them refugees. Then those asylums, and in general, in most countries, they will talk about asylum seekers or a refugee claimant. But those are the ones that are like crossing the borders and looking for a country that will host them and will recognize them as a refugees. While in Canada, most of the time, we don't talk about asylum seekers. When Canada recognize who is a refugee, who is in need of protection, and they develop the IRPA, the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, they started talking about a refugee. The word refugee, we can find this word in the convention that protect refugees, but then Canada adopted as a terminal, as a general term to define asylum seekers as a refugee. But the refugee is the one that fears persecution for religion, race, nationality, political opinion, or be part of a social group. In Canada, we also recognize that a refugee or a person that needs protection are those that are also facing domestic violence, or they are persecuting because of the sexual orientation. Canada is the few countries that recognize that a survivor of domestic violence needs protection. For example, in the United States, somebody that is seeking protection because it's a survivor of domestic violence will not get recognized as a refugee. Then in that case, Canada is more advanced in like amplifying those who needs protection. Then the migrant is the one that works voluntary. We have migrant workers in Canada that come under many programs. For example, they come with a closed work permit through an application that is called Labor Market Impact Assessment. Then they or agricultural workers, they come to Canada temporarily. And they will work, for example, somebody that works with a closed work permit, they will come to Canada and work only for 2 years, but with a specific company. Or the migrant workers that come and just work like 6 months from spring to summer, and some of them even into fall, and those will have to go back. Those migrants will not have pathway to become permanent residents. Also, another term that we can see use is displaced person, but those are the ones that are forced to flee, but internally. They don't move outside the country. They don't cross borders. Then, for example, right now, Syria, Colombia, right, Afghanistan, Yemen have in Congo had many internally displaced people. Means they move around because the conflict in one region displaces them, but they don't cross the borders. Then they are recognized and protected under the United Nations, but they don't cross the border. Then they will not be resettled, for example, to Canada. They will just stay in that other region until the government can move them to a safe region, or they will like live there as displaced persons for many years. That happen in many countries where the conflict goes and goes and goes. Then who is an immigrant? And here we can say those that are like that they just decide to go to another country, for example, as a visitor or as an international student. But then at one point of their lives, they decide to stay, to overstay the visa. They will not go back to their country of origin. Then those become that the ones that we call non-status or precarious status. The precarious migrants are like, if I come to Canada as an international student, I will have some rights, but it will be like really precarious status. Even refugees, we said refugees, they have precarious status because at any point, if the case is denied, they can be removed. Also, if you have like, as a refugee, if you're going to really, you get criminal record, for example, for more than 6 months, you will become a person with precarious status because Canada may try to remove you back to your country of origin. We can have the next, Tonya. Then these are the categories that we can see, especially in Toronto and in Ontario, that we had many undocumented. We have victims as survivors of human trafficking. We had the temporary foreign workers that they face like exploitation, and then they lost they lost the work permit, because as I was telling you, some workers will come to Canada with a Thai work permit. Means they need to work with the company that hired them. Most of them will come for 2 years, or those that have for agricultural, then they will come for short terms. But if they are exploited, something happened, they cannot continue working with that company, Some of them will become precarious migrants, and they will end it as a non-status. Like we have many visitors that come into Canada. They find the love of their life in Canada. Then they married or live with one person for 1 year, and they become common law, and they start doing a sponsorship application. Sometimes those persons face domestic violence. Then there is a breakdown in the sponsorship. They will not come become permanent residents, but then they cannot move forward, or they cannot go back to their countries, because sometimes when a sponsorship breakdown happens, already the person had been living together for 1 or 2 years. They sometimes already have children. Then those are the ones that become non-status and precarious migrants. Some of them will have like a work permit valid for 2 years. Some of them can still working with that work permit. For example, if you do an inside sponsorship, you can get an open work permit. Then you can be working with that open work permit. But those that came with a closed work permit, then definitely they will become non-status. But some of them also that they cannot go back to their country of origin, because we have many agricultural workers that they come to Canada, and supposedly they need to go through a fair program that they can be selected and come. But unfortunately, in their country of origin, sometimes they need to pay recruiters, and that's no uh, that's not legal, but that's happening. They pay recruiters to put them in the list of the workers that can come to Canada as an agricultural workers. And when we interview them, we find out that sometimes they do they loan money, they mortgage their houses. Then when they come and they are victims of labor traffic, they are exploited. Then some of them said, I have been only in Canada for 3-4 months, 5 months, and I need to send money not only for my family to survive, but also to pay the money that I owned. Then some of them decide, I will prefer to stay underground and I will not go back, because if I don't pay that money, my life it can be a risk. Then sometimes some of them we had the documentation, we can prove the abuses, or we can prove that if they go back, they can be a risk. Then we do a refugee claim for them, but not all of them can prove that their life is going to be a risk. That's why when some people said, okay, non-status people or precarious migrants is just those that come overstay the visa is not. Like, for example, refused refugee claimants. We had many cases for refugees that the Immigration and Refugee Board will said, I believe your story, but also there is some standards that needs to be applied to the refugee claimant. Then they can say, I believe your story, but also you can move internally. Like you can, and they will tell the refugee claimant, you can live in this region or in this other region. And I don't believe, I don't think so, the person that had been persecuting you can find you in this other part of the region. Especially survivors of domestic violence, they need to prove the protection of the state. Then, in some countries, the laws are beautiful written, but there is one thing to have written laws and another to really, really have the protection of the state. But in Canada, if you don't prove that the country will not protect you, they can refuse you. Then those are the refused refugee claimants that come to us and said, Diana, I prefer to live without or without any healthcare, without a work permit, but I don't want to risk to go back. And then they decide just to stay underground. We always tell them, the life that you are choosing is going to be really hard, because you will be without a work permit, you will be without any assistance. You can be exploited, because many people, we said, okay, you don't have a work permit, you don't have a social insurance number, means you don't have a status in Canada. I had many rejected refugee claimants that come and said, I did demolition. I worked for a month during the nights, even from Sunday to Sunday, doing demolition. And now the person is telling me they don't want to pay. And they said, because if I say something, they can call immigration. And even though we tell them the labor laws protect anyone in Canada without status, they are really faithful to go and to denounce what is happening to them. Then those precarious migrants can be the father of the child that sits beside my son, my daughter at the school. It can be the one that works at the grocery store, and we don't know. Tonya, can we have the next? What in general we do at FCJ? Then we have a transitional shelter for women and children. We are not recognized as a shelter, but we have 3 houses where we host women that are survivors of domestic violence, refugee claimants, and recently we also have survivors of trafficking, labor or sexual exploitation. For them, we have like support groups, community activities. We have workshops to increase them, like the skills. Also, we have the settlement support for refugee claimants, for the women and the houses. We have virtual English classes. We start with like 2-3 classes, and during the pandemic, it developed now into 17 virtual English classes. Also, we had child minding. We saw the increased need of precarious migrants that were without work, because most of them were working on some cleaning offices. Remember that downtown offices, high-rise offices were closed, empty. Then those people that were cleaning those offices were laid down. Those that were work in kitchens, in restaurants, they didn't have any jobs, and some of the children also were at home. Then we provide for them some child minding, like in virtually, and we also provide music lessons. We provide for them French, just to assist those parents to have like some time of relief. And now also we have many children even in a waiting list for that program. If we can get the next. Also, as I was telling you, that the food distribution really increased during the pandemic. Then we have around 500 families that we do not only delivery food, but also emergency items like masks, sanitizer, because most of them couldn't afford food. They couldn't for masks. Then the city provide us with all those items, and we had been delivering them every week with the food distribution. Right now we have around 12 routes that we go to Scarborough, York, Etobicoke, Brampton. And all this is possible because we had many volunteers doing the delivery food. Here is the temporary COVID isolation emergency support fund. That had been a unique program after asking the city for many years to assist precarious migrants. Finally, the city recognized that some of them were the ones that is still providing us with support in the cleaning grocery stores, but they couldn't access to any program, provincial or federal the government programs. Then they create this once-time support for COVID positive clients. Can we have the next? Also, part of the settlement integration program, we have a primary care clinic. Again, this primary care clinic is for non-status people, precarious migrants that they don't have access to HIP. Then during the pandemic, we did many rounds of vaccination. We opened our center to get vaccinated those that are without status, because many of them were reaching out to us and saying that they couldn't go and sign into the official portals because they were asking for a fixed address or for a HIP. Then we realized, okay, also people is afraid to set any government or through any website, this is my address. But they were desperate to get vaccinated because, again, they were the frontline workers. Going even into nursing homes, cleaning the home, those nursing homes during the peak of the pandemic. When everybody was at home, they were the ones risking their lives at grocery stores and cleaning. Then they were desperate, and we talked to the city, and they agreed to provide us with a kind of a special registration that we didn't have to have the HIP. And if the migrant, if the precarious status worker was scared also to provide an address, we were providing our community center address. Also, we were in partnership with the University Health Network, the Women College, and the Crossroad Clinic. When the pandemic was getting that, we knew, okay, this is going to be here. Also, we also got a special link to register non-status with a hospital, two hospitals. And we were providing a special code. Means when the hospital was getting the precarious migrant, they knew if they were coming with that code, they should not request any document, any HIP, only a document just to identify themselves. Like, yes, I am Pepito Pets, for example. But they were not requesting any HIP or any special document just to get the vaccine. That's how we had been also providing those to non-status people, that they could get vaccinated without being afraid that they could get deported, because there were news around in Alberta and BC that non-status people couldn't get vaccinated. We didn't want that happen in Ontario too, and especially in the GTA. If we can have the next, please. Also, we have a program that is called Access to Education, and this is part of these webinars are part of the Access to Education. Most of the staff at FCJ are or former refugees, international students, or people with precarious status. Then we believe that we can support others to understand what are the journeys of those migrants, of those refugees with our own experience, and then using popular education. Also, we have a youth network. Many of the youth that come to FCJ that reach out to us are youth that are coming to Canada to claim protection as a refugees, or they just went sent from back home to live with an aunt, an uncle. Those youth were welcome for like 6 months, 1 year, but later on, the family will start, some of them abusing them, then they ended in shelters. Some of them the family will say, okay, you are not welcome anymore. Then see how you can do it. Then we have many youths that are part of the FCJ family because they don't have anyone else here. And believe me, there are a lot of youths in Canada that they don't have anyone to rely on. We can have next. Also, we had the immigration help and refugee protection. We get even referrals from the airport. We get families in our doors with the luggage, waiting for us. Sometimes when it's long weekend, we found people on Mondays here that sometimes even they pass the night and in our doors, waiting for us to open. We then what we get for them is trying to get into a shelter, finding a lodger, the first step to get settled. Even some of them will come to us with deadlines that are almost at the end. Then we assist them to fill out forms. We do a lot of things like a legal clinic, but we are not a legal clinic. We are a community center. We are not lawyers. Some of us were trained international lawyers, but it's from our own experience and the experience working every day for almost 30 years with refugees that we are in the capacity to provide them with the service that probably other agencies will not be able to. We have like a virtual tour that we provide them with to connect with the Immigration and Refugee Board, and we are able to connect them with lawyers also. If we can have the next. Then we do applications for travel document. A travel document is a document, it's a kind of passport provided to protected persons in Canada or convention refugees. When a refugee goes to the Immigration and Refugee Board and they get the protection and then they become convention refugees in Canada, if they want to travel, they can travel, but they cannot go back to their country of origin. And also, they cannot go and renew the passport. This is really important because we have many refugees that come to us and said, nobody told me that I cannot renew my passport and I really wanted to travel. I'm not going back to my country, but I really want to go to a third country. Then I went to renew my passport. A refugee in Canada, a convention refugee, they cannot get the passport renewed because if they do it, they are risking to lose the protection in Canada. That's called reabellment. Like if I go to the embassy or consulate and ask them to give me again my passport, then it's like I'm asking this country to protect me again. Then they have the right to have something that is called a travel document that you need to ask Canada to give you that travel document. And with that document, you can travel anywhere except your country of origin. Also, we do permanent resident applications when a refugee claimant, they get the protection, then we do it. We notice sometimes that lawyers, refugee lawyers, they will get the the refugee status for the person, and also they can do the permanent resident application. But sometimes when they assist the refugee, that have been paid from legal aid. But when they go the permanent resident application, they will say the refugee, legal aid will not cover you to become a permanent resident because they already paid you to do the preparation for the hearing, to accompany you. Now you are a convention refugee. If you want, I can do you permanent resident, but you need to pay to me. We do this for free and other agencies do it for free. Then if you know a client that had been a refugee claimant and now they become a protected person or convention refugees, tell them that they can go and reach out to us or any other agency to do the permanent resident application that is free. That they just need to pay the fee to immigration, but they don't need to pay to the lawyers. And I know some lawyers will tell them, go to FCJ. But we have other lawyers that will say nothing to them, and they will say, I can do it for you, pay me $2,000. And sometimes those refugee claimants, they don't have the money, but they don't have the information that they can go and somebody can do it for free. And it's not like the lawyer really wants to have that money. It's, they have a business, and part of the business is to do this kind of applications. But some lawyers really will say, I will not get this money from you, go to an agency, they will do it for free. But others, they just keep quiet and they will take the money. Also, we do something that is called the pre-removal risk assessment. We are almost a unique community center that do this. This pre-removal risk assessment, if Canadian Border Services want to remove anyone that is non-status in Canada, they can be invited to do this. The pre-removal risk assessment is like the last chance to prove Canada that if you are going to be removed back to your country of origin, you can risk to be tortured or killed. Those are the only ones that will work with the pre-removal risk assessment because Canada is signatory of the Convention Against Torture. But again, some people, they will not have the money to do this pre-removal risk assessment. Then we do it. Also, we do refugee appeals. With a refugee, the case is rejected, they have the chance to do an appeal. Then again, sometimes legal aid will cover if you qualify financially, but sometimes legal aid will say, okay, you qualify financially, but we don't see that your case will have a merit, that the lawyer can win this case. Then you can send them to us because we do it, and we do it for free. There is another kind of appeal that people need to go to the federal court. We don't do that one, but we do the first one. with a rejected refugee claimant can do kind of two appeals. Then the first appeal to the Refugee Appeal Division, we do it and we do it for free. We also assist with the legal aid call. Sometimes legal aid reject refugee claimants or non-status people to do a humanitarian and compassion application. Also, we assist the clients to do the appeal to legal aid, because sometimes when the refugee claimant arrives and they get assistance from a family member to call legal aid, sometimes they provide wrong information. Then when they come to us and we do a reassessment, sometimes we call legal aid and we can get them legal aid again. Okay, you can go to the next. Also, we provide alternatives to detention. Sometimes accompanied, especially the youth, to report to CBSA, the Canadian Border Services. Also, we got with survivors of domestic violence. And sometimes we get calls from CBSA saying, we have a woman here with a child that we really don't want to detain because we are removing this woman and probably she's going to be in detention center just for 1 night or 2 nights. Then they call us and we receive that women and child or children, and we take them to our center, and then we take back to the airport when it is the date that they need to be removed. Then we provide those alternatives to detention soon. And also we provide some research about what's going on in the country of origin, because our main mandate is to assess refugee claimants. You can do the next. Another big part of our programs is the anti-human trafficking. And FCJ is the few centers also that focus the anti-human trafficking on labor exploitation and international cases. When you get the government saying we have funding and we want to tackle anti-human trafficking, most of the time they talk about sexual exploitation. But the discourse that we want to bring is that it's not only sexual exploitation, it's also labor exploitation and the international cases. Indeed, we have cases that, for example, international students, women, that they come to the country, they had been offered to do a job in, for example, in a massage parlor, and they found themselves trapped. Sometimes the study permit had been taken, and we have cases of that in our center, and also we have them living in our houses. But most of the cases that we encounter is traffic exploitation. We have here in Toronto workers that had been promised a good job in Canada. They even, when they come to Canada, they come with a letter saying, okay, as soon as you arrive in Toronto, you need to go and present yourself to this address. And then somebody is going to provide you with a work permit. What they found is that the passport will be taken away from them, that they were taken to a basement, that they were working Sunday to Sunday in construction work without receiving any payments. Most of them will owe money back home. And these are the same people that lend them the money. And they will treat them saying, okay, to pay me the money, you need to work in Canada for all these months. And then later on, when you pay me, what you owe me, then you will be free. I will give you back your passport. Life goes on. And if you don't do it, I know where your family lives. Remember, they are my neighbors back home. Then be careful, be silent. We have those cases in our backyard, and sometimes we don't know. Also, sometimes we have cases of workers that come with the agricultural worker program, and they were promised to be paid such amount of money by hour, and when they come to Canada, they realize they are going to be paid by pound. For example, we have a case of workers that they were picking up mushrooms, and when you weigh mushrooms, at the end of the day, they were not making even $20. And what they were promised was completely different. Then the explanation was, yes, we told you we are going to pay you this amount of money by hour, but then you need to pick up mushrooms if you want to make that kind of money. And that's in Durham region. Then when they find that yes, I'm in Canada, it should be any laws that protect us. Sometimes they reach out to us, and there is like an open work permit for vulnerable workers that we can get them out of the farm or the place that they are, and they will be able to work for a year with that open work permit. Unfortunately, that open work permit for vulnerable workers will not lead them to any pathway to become permanent residents. Then it's like a band-aid solution, and FCJ had been trying to work with this. That's why we have something that we call Migrant Workers Mobile Program. We go around GTA and we go around Ontario, and we try to reach out to those workers and tell them, if this happened to you, you can reach out to us and we can assist. Don't be afraid. Because some of them, like especially the agricultural workers, if they complain, most of them will be removed back home like in 2 days. Most of the supervisors speak the same language. They are the ones who take the workers to pick up the food on Sundays. Then most of the time when they trust the supervisor because it's from the same country of origin, they work the same language, they go and complain. And then most of the time what the supervisor does is, okay, we have a troubled worker, let's send back home. That many of them are really afraid to talk, and these situations goes on. And what we ask is that inspectors should be on those farms and on those constructions places more often, because this is going on. We can have the next. As also I already mentioned that we had the public education program. Then we do webinars, like how to make a refugee claim. If you do a refugee claim, what are the things that you are going to prove about your case? If you need how you can do your story, what are the angles of that story? Also, we do webinars for precarious migrants that they want to be regularized, then humanitarian and compassionate applications. And again, we do this because it's our daily work. When we start seeing people coming and telling us, okay, this is what is happening to me. I was crossing the border and this was the situation that I encountered. Then we try to get together with other organizations, try to do advocacy. And then when we do the webinars, we try to guide people what are the possible problems that they are going to encounter if they come to Canada and try to seek protection through the border, for example, with the United States. You can get the next one. Part of that public education, we have the virtual ready tour. The virtual ready tour is for refugee claimants that are in Canada waiting for the case to be resolved, and these virtual tours are free. Then FCJ is the one that coordinates these tours. They can register with us, and the tours are with the Immigration and Refugee Board. Like the Immigration and Refugee Board is the entity that will decide the refugee case in Canada. They decide, yes, you need protection, or no, Canada cannot protect you because you don't meet the definition of a convention refugee. Then we had these tours. Now that are virtual. Before the pandemic, refugees were able to go in person to the building that is at the 74 Victoria Street in Toronto. And we believe this is really important because the refugees, when they do the tour, even virtual, they will be like, okay, this is how it's going to be the setup the day of my hearing. These are like my lawyer is, I know my lawyer is going to be with me, the interpreter, and that day the officer at the IRB will provide them with tips. Like, for example, if you don't understand your interpreter, please don't be afraid, you can let us know. Things like, sometimes the lawyers will just focus on the preparation of the hearing, what are the main questions, but they don't focus on like in practical tips or things that are going to happen the day of the hearing. Then this provides like comfort to the refugee claimants to know exactly how it's going to be the day of the hearing, who is going to be there, who cannot be there. Then if you know a refugee claimant, please, you can refer them to us. Some of them will receive this information when they get the package. If you have been seeing a refugee claimant, sometimes they go around with like a carpet with forms and things that were provided to them when they claim protection. In that package, it should be information about the Ready Tour. But if no, tell them, and this is a really great tool for them. Also, they have the Refugee Immigration Appeal Division. They have virtual tours for people that have been rejected and they need to do an appeal and they cannot have a lawyer. They don't need a lawyer to do it. That's the best, to have a lawyer to do an appeal, but some of them will not have money to do it, or we cannot take because sometimes there is too many rejected refugee appeals in the same month. Then we cannot take anyone more than doing the virtual tour, how to do an appeal. Sometimes it helps them to do it by themselves, and they will guide them how to do it. We can have the next. Also, we do a lot of networking with the Canadian Council for Refugees, with OCASI. We are part of the coalition of service providers. We are part of the LEAP. We try to be part of all these networkings because we frontline workers are the ones that will know what exactly is going on there. Why refugee claimants is not receiving the work permits on time, why they cannot have access sometimes to legal aid. Then when we get together, we try to strategize, and for example, through the Canadian Council for Refugees, we can have access, sometimes meetings with the immigration and with IRCC, Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship, and we can tell them in reality, this is what is going on, how you are going to fix this situation. If we can have the next. Then this is like the refugee claim process. The Refugee Protection Division is part of the Immigration and Refugee Board. That is the entity that will decide a refugee case. In Canada, we have inland refugees, means those that arrive into Canada, for example, as a visitors or as an international students. But the main goal for them is to claim protection inland. Means sometimes they come to us and said, I came with a visitor's visa, but in reality, what I want is to ask for protection to Canada because my life is a risk at home. I was a journalist. I denounced corruption, and they tried to kill me. I'm here. Sometimes we ask why you didn't claim protection when you landed at the airport. You could do it there, and sometimes they say I didn't know, or some of them will say I was afraid, but now somebody told me I can do it. Could you help me? Those are the inland, means they need to find a lawyer. If we call legal aid. If they get the certificate to get a lawyer, legal aid will pay for them the lawyer. Or sometimes because they are visitors, when with back home, you request a visa to come as a visitor, you need to provide a lot of information. And if one of the information is said, hey, I have a lot of money in my bank account, then legally will refuse them and will say, use the money that you have and pay a lawyer. When that happens, sometimes they will say, well, that money is not mine. Really, I don't have money. Then we support them to do the forms. Then to do an inline, you can do it at any moment. But what we tell the refugee is do it as soon as possible, because that can be considered as an issue of credibility. Why you wait all these months to claim protection? Why you wait a year? Then as soon as they arrive into Canada, if they are really looking for protection because they fear going back home, they should make the inland protection. Means that you need to fill out all the forms. Also, you need to fill out something that is called basis of claim. The basis of claim is the most important document for a refugee claimant. It's like the story, the narrative, why you are claiming protection in Canada. You need to fill out all of that. You need to go to, for example, in Toronto, the IRCC offices, immigration. That day you had to present yourself with your family, all the documents. They will take away the passport from that person, and they had to come back for something that is called eligibility interview. The eligibility interview can happen in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 months. Like because of the pandemic, we have people waiting for eligibility interview since October and November 2019. Why? Because at that moment, the eligibility interview was taking 4 or 5 months. Then those refugee claimants that claim protection in November, October 2019, they were scheduled to have the eligibility interview in 2020, March, April. And at that time is when everything was locked down. Since that time, refugee claimants had been able to get the work permit, because you will get only a work permit when you go back for the eligibility interview. And what is the eligibility interview? Is to seek in those weeks, Canada will look if you have a criminal record. Canada will look if anyone is looking for you, then or that you didn't claim protection in another country. Then that's what is called eligibility. Then they will tell you when you come back, okay, you are eligible to claim protection in Canada. And at that moment, they will receive the refugee ID. When they get the refugee ID, 3-4 weeks later, they will receive the work permit. And at that time also, they should do medical exams. When you claim protection, you need to do medical exams, and the medical exams, they give you like 30 days to do it. And then when you have the refugee ID, you do medical exams, you should receive your work permit. Then these refugees have been all this time without a work permit because they haven't been able to go for the eligibility interview. The others are called port of entry refugees. Means they came, for example, to Buffalo or Windsor, that are official borders from United States, through United States. They came, they claimed protection. That day, our officer from Canadian Border Services should fill out the forms with them, should do the eligibility interview right away, and they will exit the border with the refugee ID. And then they will have 15 days to come back with the basis of claim, the narrative. That's why it's really important when we get a client coming that they claim protection at the border, to get them legal aid as soon as possible, to find a lawyer, because they have a short term to return back with the basis of claim. That is the most important document for them. Right now, because of the pandemic, people that cross at Quebec, Buffalo or Windsor, they have been provided with 45 days because the government recognized that to find a lawyer these days, because of the pandemic, or everything is virtual, they don't have access to internet, is getting them 45 days, but real time is 15 days. You can go to the next. Right now, because the offices of immigration had been closed, the government create for the first time in years an email that people can claim protection. But we really tell clients, don't just go and use this email and say, I'm in Canada, I'm here to claim protection, because this activate the process. Means that if I'm telling Canada, Diana Gallego, I'm here, I want to claim protection, but in 3 months I will say, oh, really, I don't want to do that. I want to go back home. Or I just want to disappear and stay, means that if I activate the process, I will get a warrant against me, because Immigration and Refugee will say, okay, you told us you want to claim protection in Canada, but you didn't continue the process. You abandoned the case. And when a refugee claim abandon the case, means in 30 days, you have to go. And if you don't go, then you have a removal against you. If you don't appear with that removal order in 30 days, then they will send you like a warrant. Then we have a couple of cases that people were like, oh, I was told I can claim protection, but really, I don't think so. I have the evidence, then I don't want to continue. Then we caution anyone just to send an email, please look for legal advice before activating and start the inland claim. If we can do the next. Also, I have been saying that the basis of claim, the narrative, is the most important document, because here is where you will set why you are afraid to go back. Who was the agent of persecution? Is there any law, state protection, that can guarantee that I cannot be harmed? Can I move internally? Yes, I already tried. I moved here and here. Then this document will have some questions, guidelines on how I can look for the protection. And remember, if I did it at the border, I have 15 days to fill out this. then it's really important to when you have a client to recognize, oh, okay, was in land, it was in land, already they did it, but it was a port of entry, they should look for legal advice as soon as possible, apply to legal aid, get a lawyer to do the basis of claim. And if they don't have that, then refer them to a community center like us that we can support them. Because if they miss the 15 days deadline, they can be declared that they abandoned the case, and then they had to go for a special hearing and explain why they didn't do the basis of claim. We have clients living in a shelter, nobody talked to them, nobody looked the papers, and they missed that day. Then we had to go with them uh, and explain really what happened. We can have the next. Then also we have resources how to figure it out. If you can redirect the clients to us, then they can look to see how they can fill out the basis of claim. Sometimes we we advise the clients not to fill it out, but sometimes we said it's better just even to fill out the basic questions like family members and put like a general story and comply with the 15 days that or deadline if it's 30 or 40 days because of the pandemic, because then later on and you can put a note, this was figured out without legal advice. Means when they get later on legal advice, a lawyer can do something that is called amendment of the basis of claim. Sometimes we have clients that the basis of claim is the deadline is the same day. Sometimes we send a letter to the Immigration and Refugee Board asking for an extension, but if we don't have like a great excuse why the refugee claimant is going to miss the deadline, what we do is like to try to figure it out as much as we can with an explanation, not saying this was figured out without legal advice. Later on, the refugee claimant will do the amendments, the necessary amendments. Just not to let them to go through a special hearing and explain what happened if really they don't have a good explanation. If they go for that special hearing that is called abandonment hearing, if they don't have a good explanation why didn't figure it out on time, then the case can be declared abandoned, means that they can be removed from the country. Then sometimes we said it's better just to figure it out as much as we can with just a paragraph of why they are fleeing. For example, I'm a survivor of domestic violence. This was the agent who persecuted me. That's it. Send it. That's to risk to go back for abandonment hearing. I know looking at this document, it can get scary. But if the agency cannot assist the refugee claimant to do it, because some agencies will say we cannot touch those documents, I can get in trouble, then we said tell the refugee to go outside, figure it out, bring it back to me, and we will send it by fax. That's another possibility. You are not putting your like name as liable of anything. Okay, then we can do the next. Then when you apply for refugee protection Canada, these are all the forms that you need to fill it out. One that I really want to call your attention is Schedule 12. In the package that the refugee claimants carried, these four should be with them. Some lawyers will take it, will not provide a copy, but most of the time, the first week, they will have it. One form that I always advise to everybody to look is Schedule 12. Why? In the Schedule 12, at the end, question 9 or 10, there is a little box that says, are you requesting a work permit? Most of the time, an inland claim, most of the time the lawyers will be careful and they will do it. But this is a problem when the refugees cross the border. Sometimes CBSA officers, they don't click that box. Or what we have noticed is that they fill out a Schedule 12 that is not up to date. They fill out the old form. But if they fill out the new forms, you just need to check if at the end of the form, they will click, yes, I'm requesting a work permit. Because if in that form, the officer will not click, yes, I'm requesting a work permit, we have a refugee claimants waiting for a year, even at 2 years for a work permit. And finally, they come to us and said, okay, I have other friends that claim protection. They have a work permit, but I never got it. And I was told I should wait. And we go and we check the Schedule 12. It's because the CBSA officer at the border didn't check, yes, you need a work permit, or they check, but the address that was provided there, the refugee claimant is not at that address anymore. And sometimes immigration will send the work permit to that address. It got lost. They never get it. Then when you get a recent refugee claimant, just if you check basis of claim, when it's due, and Schedule 12, yes, you are going to receive a work permit, that will provide the refugee claimant with a huge assistance. And it's just checking those little boxes. And tell them, if you are going to move from this address that you already told them, let them know, because you need to change that address. And in that package, you will see a yellow page. That yellow page, it says, change my address. It's really easy to figure it out. Okay, and when you figure out that, you send it, and then the work permit will arrive safe to the place that should arrive. But I see that many settlement agencies or just settlement workers, they said, oh, we don't work with refugee claimants. I will not check anything. Just checking that if they will receive a work permit, that's a huge assistance for somebody that is new in Canada. Then you don't need to do anything. Just send it back to us and we will reapply again for the work permit. It was no issue. They have been long waiting for that. Something happened. Okay. Then we can have the next. This is the refugee ID that some people will call brown paper. And this is the document that refugee claimants, they need to get it in order for them to get the work permit. These days, those that claim protection inland during the pandemic, they have a document that is called acknowledgement letter. It's just a white document that says UC number, the name of the person, and saying that they need to go back for eligibility interview. That acknowledgement letter will allow the refugee claimant to receive interim federal help and to receive, to be registered for English classes, and that's it. And to be receiving Ontario works. But again, unfortunately, with the acknowledgement letter, they will not get a work permit. But when the refugee claimant get this ID, the refugee ID protection, they will be able to get access to everything. And this is going to be like the ID. That's why now we are telling the refugee claimants that have the acknowledgement letter to go and get the Ontario ID, because the acknowledgement letter is just a blank document without like official, it's kind of an unofficial document without no picture, anything. Then, and remember, the refugee claimant were taking away most of the IDs, the passport. Then we advise any refugee claimant in land that claim in land to go and get the Ontario ID, just in order for them, because we don't know when immigration is going to call them back for the refugee ID. Then they will be like without an ID for some time, and that will prevent them to do many things, especially now that people that got vaccinated for COVID-19, they need to have an ID to prove who they are. And some people will not accept a copy of the valid passport. Then we can have the next. I've been already telling about the work permit, that you only will be issued a work permit when you get the eligibility interview, that you should review a Schedule 12.4 to see if the refugee claimant really will get it. And we also have like a webinar. If you go into our website, you will find a webinar on how to guide somebody to do a work permit. But we do it, and we will do it for free. And you can go to the next. This is important for people that is going to apply for legal aid, not only for refugee claimants, but for survivors of domestic violence that are going to apply for the temporary resident permit for family violence, and for humanitarian and compassion applications. Many precarious migrants that they are rejected refugee claimants, or they just overstay the visa, or they are vulnerable workers. They just decide to stay, and they have a remedy that is called humanitarian and compassionate. If they are working, but they don't have like a lot of money, they don't have the financial means to pay a lawyer, they can call legal aid, and they can have access to a lawyer that they can do the humanitarian and compassionate for non-status, or the humanitarian and compassionate for family violence, and the temporary resident permit for those women survivors of domestic violence. Then what we explain, if the client speak the language, what we explain to them is that they need to call legal aid these numbers, that the first agent will take sometimes 20 minutes, 30 minutes to answer, just wait for them, that the first person, that the first agent will get, they need a phone number, an email address, because now legal aid is creating those like portals to communicate with the client, to get them a consent form, to get them any news about if they were approved. Then they need an email address and phone number and mailing address. And then the first agent will ask them how long you have been in Canada, why you are calling legal aid, are you a refugee claimant, or you just want to do a humanitarian and compassionate, or you want to get access to a refugee, a family law, because you encounter some problems with family law if you are a survivor of domestic violence. That agent will pass the client to a second agent, and the second agent, you have to wait sometimes 30 minutes, 40 minutes, even 45 minutes, but the second agent will go more in deep in questions. If you are a refugee claimant, how long you have been in Canada? Do you have bank account? Do you have properties back home? If you had to ask for a visa overseas to come to Canada, did you declare money? Are you an international student? If you are international student, again, who paid you to come to Canada? Is your family willing to pay you for a lawyer in Canada? Those are the questions for refugee claimants. And in general, what the agent wants is, why you are claiming protection. You don't need, I always tell clients, when you call legal aid, you don't need to tell them what exactly is your story. They just want a general, okay, I'm a journalist. I was persecuted. The government was the agent that persecuted me. But you don't need to explain in detail, because we also tell refugees, you are going to tell your story many times. If you tell that story many times, you can re-traumatize yourself. Then in general, legal aid, what they are looking is financial information, that you don't have money, and in general, what you are doing. I have been here in Canada for 6 years. I'm a rejected refugee claimant. Now I want to be regularized. I want to do my humanitarian and compassionate. That's like something in general. You don't need to go in detail of all your life, all what happened to you. With that will be enough. Then the second specialist will provide you with the, if they grant you, then you, the certificate, you can go and look for a lawyer. And always I explain to especially refugee claimants that a private lawyer that people can pay $10,000, $7,000 is a private lawyer that also gets legal aid. And that lawyer will do the same beautiful work if you pay 10,000 or legal aid will pay them. Because sometimes refugees, we come from countries that we don't trust services from any one of the government. And that's one thing that we need to reassure them, that even though you are getting paid by legal aid, your lawyer, the lawyer will take care of you like any private, that you are paying any private lawyer. And also those that without status, they can get um, uh, legal aid too. Yes, you can move the next, and we are going to talk about barriers. If you can move to the next. Then, in general, what are the barriers that precarious migrants face in Canada? Then, in general, is social isolation. Some of them are afraid to go out, to let them, the neighbors or anyone, friends, that they are without status, or at one point they were with the status and now there are failed refugees. Then they become really isolated. Then some of them will have a lot of trauma, lack of trust, and I was given an example with legal aid. Some of them, they will come to Canada, and the first thing that they will see and who is going to interview them is a CBSA officer. And when you see a CBSA officer, what you see is probably a military person or a police officer. I know in Canada they are not part of those bodies, but as a new person in Canada, that's what I see. Then especially refugees, when they arrive into the airport, they really are really scared and they don't know what to do. That's why some of them, they said, I couldn't claim protection at the airport because I didn't know what they were expecting for me. I didn't trust that guy that was interviewing me. He was like a police. And when we explained to them, no, he's not police, he's a border person that can give you to enter Canada, can remove you, but you don't get it, then a lot of trauma and a lack of trust in authority. They face a lot of racism, discrimination, and also another barrier that we are seeing that's incremented with the pandemic is family reunification. Refugee claimants can wait sometimes 6 months, beautiful, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, just to be here by the Immigration and Refugee Board, to have a hearing, to the Immigration and Refugee Board to decide, yes, I'm a protected person in Canada, I'm a convention refugee. Then you need to wait all that time to become a protected person in Canada to start family reunification. And family reunification now is getting 24, 30 months, 3 years. Then you added I wait 2 years for my hearing. Now I'm a protected person and I apply for my family reunification, but my family, I will not be reunified with my family sometimes even for 3 more years. Then that is causing a lot of anxiety, mental health problems, and more social isolation. And we have been asking immigration to step up and try to speed up family reunification, especially for refugee claimants. And don't talk about those that are failed refugee claimants, because if they are rejected refugee claimants, then they need to wait long time again to do probably a humanitarian and compassionate case. If they win the humanitarian and compassionate case, then they need to become a permanent resident, and then they need to start a sponsorship. Here at FCJ, we work especially with survivors of domestic violence for 17 years in order for them to be able finally to bring the children to Canada. They are failed refugee claimants, then they have a long wait, a long process to get the status in Canada. And during that time, they will face a lot of abuses, especially when they work. Then also accessing education. Refugee claimants in Canada, they need to pay fees as an international students. Any youth that is in Canada without status, they can go up to high school, but when they finish, some of them realize that they cannot go and continue higher education, go to college. Then those are real barriers that some newcomers face in Canada. These days, the Toronto District School Board were refusing children that they didn't have a study permit, or the parents didn't have a status, when education is a human right. And anybody, especially in Toronto, that is a sanctuary city, should be able to register the children in a school. We hope that that can be resolved any soon, because we have children without their fault that they cannot go to school for 6 months. We have a 14 years old girl that couldn't go to school for a year because the parents have like status as a visitors, and the school board that was not in Toronto, was in another city, was rejecting them all over and over, that they couldn't go to school. Then they face a lot barriers accessing education. We can go next. Then also the resources that we have for refugees, that they can have when they get the refugee ID or the acknowledgement letter, that they can have access to social assistance, they can have access to legal aid, they can be registered in English classes. These days, we have been seeing that to register a refugee claimant through the YMCA just with the acknowledgement letter had been really hard, because for YMCA, like, the acknowledgement letter is not enough proof that the refugee is a refugee in Canada. Also, they can access to shelter, then going to a school up to high school, because any refugee claimant that wants to go to university or high school, they need to pay international fees. We have a program in Toronto with the York University, that allowed refugee claimants or students without status to go to York University for a special program, and if they are accepted, they can pay fees as a domestic students, but they cannot have access to OSAP. Then if they want to go to York University, they need to pay the fees as a domestic, but from their own pocket, they cannot have access to any assistance. But at least FCJ, after working many years with precarious status, were able to work with York University to accept refugee claimants to pay domestic fees and non-status students to go and study. Also, they can have access, as soon as they get the work permit, they need a social insurance number, then they need to apply. And something related with the social insurance number is a refugee claimant will get a work permit that is valid for 2 years, most of the time, 2 years. When the 2 years of the work permit is up, the social insurance number will be up to. Like the work permit expired today, my social insurance will expire today. Then I cannot continue working. Then refugee claimants, they are advised to apply even 2 months before the expiration of the work permit, because it can take up to 8 weeks for IRCC, Immigration and Refugees and Citizenship, to send back the work permit. And then with that work permit, they can go and get access to a social insurance number. Even if you are now a protected person or a convention refugee, until you become a permanent resident of Canada, any protected person or convention refugee needs to renew the work permit and the social insurance number. We get clients that said, oh, I was approved 1 year ago, but my PR card haven't arrived, my landing documents haven't arrived. And I was telling you that a refugee claimant has sometimes wait for 3 years to become a permanent resident and to bring the family. Then during that time, they need to renew the work permit and the social insurance number. Okay, that needs to be clear. As soon as they become permanent residents of Canada, they will get the final social insurance. But before that, they always will get a social insurance number that starts with 9. Okay, we can go next. If you go to our website, you can have access to all this information. Like if you are looking for a shelter for a refugee claimant or anyone that needs access, then these are like the main phone numbers that you can call, or if they need Ontario Works, financial assistance, these are the information that you can access and refer them. We can get the next. Also, you can go and check it out. The Salvation Army, sorry, and the resources that are here, that you can refer them and go and look for settlement resources. Like how I register my child in a school, how to get housing, all that. And another great tool to get them is the settlement.org. Here is how can I apply for my OHIP when I become a permanent resident. If you are a refugee, how I can validate my credentials, if I want to go back to school. All these, the settlement.org resources are really good, and where I can find a volunteer work if I want to do volunteer, then, and they update them frequently. Then if we can have the next. Also, when I get a refugee claimant, I always try, if they speak the language, if not, these kits are in many languages. I try to get them the link if they have access to a computer, or sometimes I print them for them. Is these guidelines that Clio and an association from Vancouver created. They are really, really good because sometimes we have, unfortunately, we have lawyers that will guide the refugee claimants step by step, but others, they will tell me, even they are paying by the pocket, they said, well, I have been seeing my lawyer 2 times. And most of the time what I see is the assistant. Nobody had explained me what is going to happen, what is the next step. Then most of the time I refer them back to these guidelines, and really they explain step by step what are the things that the refugee claimant should encounter. If you go for a hearing, what they are going to look, credibility, an alternative to move internally in the country. Then I know they have legal advice, but if they understand the process, sometimes they will get empowered to ask and to request those services from the lawyers and ask, okay, I know they are going to ask me probably this question. Can you explain me more about this, or how this is going to affect my case? Because I understand that I probably they can ask me why I didn't move internally. Then how I'm going to address this question. Then it provides them with the power also to ask and to do a research, and just not to wait at the last moment that the lawyer is going to say, oh, by the way, we need this document. Oh, by the way, they are going to ask you this, how we are going to address this. And they will be better informed, and they will be empowered to take their case on their own hands. If we can get the next. And I already told you about this, that these tours are free and people can be registered with us through Carolina Teves, who was the one that organized today this webinar that Tonya had been in contact with. You can go the next. Also, there is a tool that is called the Refugee Hearing Program with Matthew House. Matthew House is a refugee house in Toronto that when you get a refugee claimant that they couldn't access to legal aid because financially they don't qualify, but they don't financially they don't qualify because probably they said, oh, my parents are the ones who are paying for to come to Canada. Anything that legally will say, oh, you have a house back home, sell your home. If you are escaping, how you are going to sell your home back home, but they are rejected from legal aid, then these are the ones that will end it without legal representation. Sometimes they come to Canada with $4,000. The first week, legal aid will ask, okay, do you have money? Yes, I have 4,000. Take those 4,000, pay a lawyer. But they said, I'm looking for home. It's winter. I need to buy jackets. I already spent 2,000. What is left is 2,000. I'm really afraid to take those 2,000 and give it to a lawyer. And refugee claimants ended up without legal representation. Then at the end, we take them to Matthew House. Matthew House will do like a mock hearing. We'll prepare them for the hearing. What are the questions that are you going to expect? But this is for people without legal representation. If you call Matthew House because the lawyer haven't been prepared, then well, sometimes refugee claimants will say, I don't think so. The lawyer have been doing a great job with me. I still have these questions, but that haven't answered. Matthew House will not do it. Matthew House will do hearing preparation only for those that are without legal representation. And you can do the next. This is just like a general question. I don't expect to go through this, but it's just like a self-reflection question about listening and hearing about what is the process of refugees, what are the things that they encounter, how do you think you can support them? Even just, I was telling you to check if they change address, that's why they never receive the work permit, and refer them to an agency or resource kit that provide them with more information to empower them. Then I did my job. And the next is, really thank you. I don't know if there is any other questions that you want me that I can address. Yes, Tonya.
First of all, thank you so much for all this information. I just have a question. So we work with, most of us on the line work with women facing unexpected pregnancy. And some of us help sort of walk with them throughout the process of the pregnancy and even afterwards. In the case of a refugee or a non-status woman without status, how easy is it for her to access doctors and hospital support and whatnot?
Okay. We get refugee claimants that get come to Canada pregnant like 7 months, and that's why sometimes we quickly need to get them a lawyer, because without the acknowledgement letter or the refugee ID, they will not have access to the interim federal health. But if there are no refugee claimants that are just women without status, we have, as I mentioned, we have a clinic here for an insurance people. Then depends if they are just starting in the pregnancy, we try to get them to like a hospital or to I lost the word. It's not a doctor that takes care of pregnant women.
Would it be a midwife?
A
Maybe?
midwife, yes.
Midwife.
A midwife. And they take women without any status, and they will assist them. Then we have in our network of clinics for an insurance non-status woman that are pregnant. Depends if they come to us and they're already 6-7 months. Sometimes midwives, they don't take them, but then we will refer them to a hospital. Unfortunately, if they have to go and deliver to a hospital, they will be charged. During the pandemic, we had many of them that they didn't have to pay because, especially Toronto and in Ontario, they said because of the pandemic, anyone without HIP can have access to healthcare. Yeah. Now, many doctors want to do advocacy and said, if we didn't do them during the pandemic, we should keep it, offering health care for those that are non-status. Then through an insurance clinic, Unison, for example, is another huge network of clinics that will get the women pregnant to prenatal care. But unfortunately, yes, the delivery they will receive a bill. But if they go with midwife and do it at home, it will not be a cost for them.
That's a problem for us, though. We're getting lots of calls in the last, 6 months. We've had 3 or 4, and they were with midwives, and then they've turned into more at-risk pregnancies, needing C-sections, and then the midwives can't take them.
Yes.
And so they've been calling us and saying, where can they get help? Because, we had 2 in the last, their bills were over $10,000 coming to us saying, can you help us? It's beginning to be a real problem. It's tough.
It is, yes. then you can contact us because we have the clinic here, and sometimes depends of the city that they are located. Sometimes it's easy to get assistance. And then we can look around to see. At the end, they are going to pay something, but sometimes even we talk to the social workers at the hospital, and we sometimes can get the bill to be reduced. Yeah, we do a lot of advocacy around hospitals with that kind of clientele. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Just if you have questions, just unmute and ask Tiana.
Okay. Then if there is anything else, then thank you for being here. And if you need to refer us, any client, please do it. Especially if you have women survivors of domestic violence. Remember, there is a special program that is called Humanitarian and Compassionate for Family Violence. But it's not only the humanitarian and compassion application. With that application, the person can do a temporary resident permit that can be up to 1 year. And with that temporary resident permit, they can have access to a free open work permit. Those two things will provide the woman with status in Canada. And in the meantime, a lawyer can do a humanitarian and compassion application that at the end will provide with a permanent resident status to the person in Canada. Legal aid will fund the humanitarian and compassionate part, but they will not pay the lawyer to do a pro bono, the temporary resident permit and the work permit. But we have, for now, we have two lawyers that they do it pro bono. They do pro bono the temporary resident permit, the work permit, and legal aid will pay them to do the humanitarian and compassionate. Because we have some clients that were referred to a lawyer from the shelter, but they come to us and we said, okay, is the lawyer doing the temporary resident permit and the work permit? No, it's just the humanitarian. And what we said is, you have a strong case, even the police was involved, you can have access, and the temporary resident permit will provide interim federal help to the woman and services, mental health services and counseling for free. Then why don't use those resources? And what happened is, because the lawyer is not paying for those things, they will not do it. They will just do the humanitarian, but humanitarian will not provide access to healthcare, access to social services, nothing, no even a work permit. Then make sure that when you refer the case to a lawyer, do the advocacy and said, can you do this part pro bono? And you can even refer the lawyer to us, because the lawyer sometimes he says, okay, if I have an organization that do the everything, all the forms ready for me, I will send it together with the humanitarian. We can do that, okay? But it needs to be talked to the lawyer, because sometimes we get the client too late when the lawyer already sent the humanitarian, they don't want anything. But if when they start the process, they can say, okay, can you do the temporary resident permit, the work permit? And they will say no, then can the client work with you and FCJ Refugee Center together, that we can send all these in the meantime that you do the humanitarian and compassionate? We can do it together. We can work with the lawyer. We will support that part, but that will provide the status, an open work permit, access to healthcare to a survivor of domestic violence that sometimes are pregnant, in the meantime that they get the humanitarian and compassionate. Okay.
Diana, are those applications, are they on your website, or do you have to go through the center like to access them?
Yeah, no, they are not on the website.
Okay.
Yes, but if you refer the client, and if the client speak English and can do it, we can guide them to figure it out. Okay. And talk to the lawyer to make sure that things go through smoothly and without errors. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, then, Tonya, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you
And
so much
please
for being
feel
there.
free to contact me at any time if you need support.
Thank you. And I just have another quick question.
Mhm.
What is the best way? So do you offer virtual appointments as well as in person?
All the time. All the time.
Okay.
Since the pandemic, we are doing the intakes virtually. Yes.
Okay.
And if the person needs to come here to sign a document because they don't have access to a printer, they can come. But yes, the intakes or the appointments can be by phone or even by Zoom if the person needs. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for today, and thanks for being here to teach us and pass on your incredibly valuable information.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Incredible,
much.
incredible information. Thank you, Diana.
Okay. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Take care.
Thanks. Okay, everybody, thanks for joining today, and thanks for your patience at the beginning.
Thanks for hosting that, Tanya. That was amazing. Great
Thank you.
information.
Thanks.
Great.
Take care.